Hi, my name's Darisi, and I'm a bass drummer. Recently, I made a Google form asking other bass drummers to identify bass drum rudiments. I got over 150 responses of people trying to put names to 27 different bass drum patterns. I'm inclined to think that of all the people that know of bass drum rudiments, that 150 people is a statistically significant amount of them. So I'm gonna do my best to analyze the responses I collected, discuss why I made this form, and extract some meaningful conclusions that we can all learn from. Before we get into the data, we need some context. What is a rudiment? How do they apply to bass drum, and why do we need them? In rudimental logic, Bill Bachman said, there is no scientific basis that we can use to classify a drum pattern as a rudiment. I believe he's saying that rudiments aren't as concrete as we want them to be. Sometimes parameters are enforced that can make a bass drum pattern multiple rudiments or not a rudiment at all. One example comes from a person that told me that rhythms don't dictate rudiments. If that's the case, then what separates a herta from a single stroke 4? What separates a double stroke roll from alternating flams? What's the difference between a flam accents, single drag taps, and paradiddles? It's the rhythm. Without rhythm, rudiments are just stickings. And snare drum rudiments get kind of confusing when you only focus on the sticking. Same goes for bass drum. There are some cases where rhythm dictates rudiments. I included these patterns to see how bass drummers would react to seeing the same pattern in different rhythms. There is another case, specific to bass drum, that makes our definition of a rudiment a little abstract. The speed at which we play something will determine what we call it. None of the patterns in my questionnaire included a tempo, so some people were understandably confused about what to call these patterns because they didn't know how fast they were. Is it a 2-split or a wee-woo? Is it a laser or a mega laser? I don't know. And to make matters worse, there is another factor that makes defining a bass drum rudiment tricky. If you visualize a snare rudiment existing in one dimension, only able to move left or right on a page, bass drum rudiments exist in 2 dimensions, able to move through time, left and right, and through pitch, up and down. I included a couple examples of a pattern that only changes pitch to see how people responded to this. When this pattern alternates between bass 1 and bass 2, people called it a single split. When I took the same pattern and displayed it between bass 1 and bass 3, people called this a single split. Fair game. But when I took the same pattern and displayed it between bass 1 and bass 5, it suddenly got a new name. Things like bookends or bin split. Why is this considered a separate rudiment when essentially nothing changed? It's still just 2 bass drummers splitting 16th notes on one hand. I got an interesting response related to this little conundrum. One person said that they differentiate car bombs and game cubes, as the car bombs stay in the downward voicing pattern for the check and game cubes travel back up the drums on the check. I believe their differentiation of these two patterns would look something like this. Once again, we see the same general pattern, only different voicings. This just goes to show that the voicing is a factor in how we define a bass drum rudiment. Through your responses, we've been able to determine that rhythm, tempo, and voicing are all a factor in how we classify a rudiment. But this still doesn't make it clear how or why new rudiments are established. Let's ask Bachman. He believes that what makes a rudiment is the requirement of a unique hand motion or combination thereof. He's talking about snare drum rudiments here, but we can extrapolate what this could mean for bass drum. Bass drum rudiments should have a unique feeling. Rhythm, tempo, and voicing only matter to a rudiment if it creates a unique sensation for the people playing it. Let's take these patterns for example. Sure, they are similar on paper, but bass 5 is going to have a different feeling, splitting bass 1 as opposed to bass 4. Now, all of this is cool and interesting, but why does it matter? What advantage are we going to get from establishing bass drum rudiments rather than just playing what's on the page? Rudiments exist to classify unique sensations when we're drumming. It's worth learning rudiments and practicing them specifically so that we can learn many unique sensations efficiently, allowing us to improve faster than if we didn't have rudiments. Once these unique feelings become muscle memory, we can insert our experience practicing them into the context of the music. Without rudiments, every piece of music would be entirely new to us. But with rudiments, we can carry our knowledge of these recognizable patterns into any scenario. I had to make this introductory video to set some context for the data that I collected and to set some groundwork for the conclusions that we're going to be making in future videos. I'm doing all of this because I'm working on a really big project, and part of that is a bass drum rudiment dictionary. That's all I'm going to say for now, but I would love to shed some more light on what I'm working on in future videos. If you have any thoughts on any of this, just put them in the comments and I'll address them just like I'm addressing 150 responses from you guys. So that's all I've got for now. Thanks for watching. Peace.